Greetings. Thanks for watching. So this is part 2 of a lesson in 4 parts. So if you haven't watched lesson number 1, which was last week, that would have been August 2nd, Thursday, August 2nd, Thursday, August 2nd. Make sure you watch the first part of the lesson before you do this, because it won't make sense otherwise. You'll notice I've added my website here because I want you all to know that I teach lessons weekly and you can join them live on Zoom no matter where you live. So we're going to continue with this lesson, build on it, and I'd like you to think about a few things this week. I'd like you to think about approaching the lesson without trying to succeed. I'd like you to think about finding some new details to pay attention to that you may have never paid attention to before. So rather than trying to get something right or trying to be a success, you're just trying to expand your ability to sense. It's kind of like tuning in the radio, fine-tuning in the radio so that the signal's really clear. So with that said, let's start where we left off. So where we left off was we had done this work with the knees. So let's come back again, and as we always do, just take a little time to settle into the floor. So let your breath start to slow, and notice how you're meeting the floor with your bones. You may notice your heels touching the floor and the back of your pelvis touching the floor. Perhaps some part of your upper back is touching the floor. Can you find your right shoulder blade? And can you notice which part of your right shoulder blade is the heaviest? Is it the inner border? Is it the point of the blade? Is it more on the outside? And then move over to the left shoulder blade. Right away, what's different about the left blade from the right blade? And you can go back and forth, kind of like doing a slide comparison in art history. What's the right like? What's the left like? Which has more contact? Which feels wider? Which feels flatter, more like a shoe resting on the floor? And then do you have any awareness of the space between your shoulder blades? So your spine is there, and there's a little space between your spine and your right shoulder blade. And then there's a little space between your spine and your left shoulder blade. What's the difference between those two spaces? And then from there, what does the curve in your neck feel like? So how long is it from beginning to end? It probably ends in your skull, with a spot on your skull that rests on the floor. Where does it begin? And like looking at the ends of the rainbow, you're going to look at both ends, and then you're going to look at the middle, at the apex of the curve, and you're going to guess how many stacked fingers would fit under that curve. 2, 3, 4. Just take a little measurement to see what's what. And then we will leave that. Would you please bend your right knee and stand your right leg on the floor. Bend your left knee, stand your left leg on the floor. I want you to know I have shorts on under here, so everything's groovy. Let's imagine a marionette string that's captured your right middle finger and is beginning to pull it towards the ceiling. So there's a difference between reaching to the ceiling, like you want to touch the ceiling, go ahead and do that. Activating with intention. And simply allowing yourself to dangle from that marionette string. So play a few moments with the difference between an intense reach and a passive dangling. Then please do the same. Well, no, let's just stay with the right shoulder blade right now. So now the marionette string is going to be responsible for moving your arm. You were not. So you're going to allow the marionette string to draw the shoulder away from the floor, away from the spine, and then the marionette string will paste the shoulder blade back down to the floor. So it's a little like peeling a stamp off its backing, starting with one corner and then peeling through the middle and then all the way to the other side, and then pasting it down in reverse. So there's no place to go, there's nothing to accomplish. And the more you sense the quality of what's happening, the more you allow the whole width of your shoulder blade to flatten to the floor, the more subtle you become in your movements, the more your nervous system will become adept at tuning in to the details. For instance, you may notice that the movement of your arm is actually not very smooth, that it kind of wobbles back and forth as it moves, or that it jerks a little bit as it's lowered. That's appropriate for the nervous system etching in a new pattern that's not familiar. We don't usually experience our arms in this relationship to gravity. So this is new information. Notice your breathing and allow your breathing to help you. You may want to inhale as you're pulled to the ceiling and exhale as you lower, or the opposite way around. So repeat that a few more times. How wide can you be across your right shoulder girdle? And can you feel the weight of that arm, those arm bones that are now resting in vertical with all of their weight dropping through the shoulder blade into the floor? Let that arm down and just sense if, just with this little bit, if there's anything different between your shoulder blades. Then begin again with the left side, so the left marionette string will begin to guide the bones of the left arm until they're dangling in vertical. Reach to the ceiling actively, like you want to touch the ceiling. Dangle from the ceiling passively, as if the support is coming from above. Then allow the marionette string to play your shoulder blade, to peel it, to pace it. When it peels away from the floor, does it also get wider? Does it move across the upper back till it's moving around the circumference of the rib cage towards the side? Is that happening? Can you feel it? It may be happening and you may just not be feeling it. So it's like a sliding closet door. It moves away from the spine, but then the wall curves as the wall of the rib cage curves. So it starts to move more in the forward direction than in the sideways direction. That's where the shoulder blade lifts off the floor more. So many tiny details to pay attention to. So many interesting things that are happening that are outside your control, like the wobbling of the arm, like the ratchety quality when you lower the arm. Particularly if you really move glacially, then you'll start to discover how ridiculously out of control you are in this movement. Using the image of the marionette string to help you feel that the arm is supported from above. Continuing to widen, 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 widen. Good, let your arm down and take another rest. Bring both arms to the ceiling and bring your palms together so you're creating an isosceles triangle, 2 long sides and 1 short side across your shoulder blades. Sense the weight in the bottom of the triangle. Like in the bottom of a pyramid, the weight is the heaviest at the bottom. So now put a laser flashlight or a laser pointer between your fingertips that's pointing directly to the ceiling, and begin to move the isosceles triangle a tiny bit to the right and back to center. So the beam that comes from your chest, shining straight out your fingertips, is connected to your shoulder blades in the back. And so you can only move a little tiny bit. Your elbows need to stay straight. You could do this movement by moving your bent arms, but you wouldn't be affecting the spine from between the shoulder blades. So once again, laser beam from the chest pointed between the hands. You begin to try and move that isosceles triangle a little bit to the right and back to center where you let the shoulder blades rest. A little bit to the left and back to center where you let the blades rest. Start to soften into the movement by inhaling as you go to the side and exhaling as you come back to center, and let your shoulder blades drop. This is not an easy movement to find, people. It requires some curiosity and trying some things that may not work. So failure is a welcome thing in this work, because the more failed attempts, the closer you get to having success. It's just like a scientist. Let's try this. Oops, that didn't work. Let's try this. Whoops, that didn't work. Let's try this. Well, part of that worked. Let's keep that, but let's keep trying to find some other way. Are you using a lot of effort? Are you holding your breath? Can you simply find the support through your upper back against the floor? What if instead of thinking of the point of the triangle, you think of what you're doing across your back? From your spine in the middle, across the skin, to the medial inside border of the left shoulder blade, a little bit further, back along the skin, over the spine. Now the skin again to the right, the inside border of the right shoulder blade, and back, and continue that. Continue that. Taking a rest whenever you need to. If you need to have a break, you can let both arms get pulled to the ceiling and dropped back down. So it's a quick drop now rather than a slow paced. Help yourself by feeling the weight of the shoulder girdle resting in the floor, and then use yourself against the floor. You're pushing against the carpet so that you can move yourself to the right and the left. And then suddenly the movement becomes easier. It's not that you're hoisting your arms from side to side, but that the rolling against the floor is suddenly making the movement easier and easier. And you're actually massaging your upper back against the floor. All right, so let your arms down, let your legs down. Now please sense how you sense your shoulder blades against the floor, the difference between the right shoulder blade and the left shoulder blade. Which shoulder girdle feels wider, the right or the left? Your sense of the space between your shoulder blades. Your sense of the curve of the upper back and the neck, the beginning and ending points. deep the curve is, whether it's gotten a little bit more shallow, and go ahead and reach up and test. See if you have a little bit less space between you and the floor. And then just, excuse me, just gently roll your head against the floor. Again, just like you were doing with your upper back, you're using the floor to push against, to roll yourself, rather than hoisting yourself without any ground support. Maybe you think of a heavy bowling ball and how it has to use the ground to push itself, the way a slug has to use the ground, or a slug, not a snail, to push itself against the floor. All right, so we're going to pause there, whoops, and come back next week. I just wanted to point out that I am now showing you my website so that you can check out my classes on Zoom. Thanks for watching. I'll be back next week.